There is a specific kind of ache, a longing that only a certain generation truly understands. It isn't just simple nostalgia, and it isn't just missing the innocence of childhood. It's something far deeper, an existential yearning for a world that moved slower, felt more real, and carried a sense of meaning that seems to have dissolved in today's digital noise. If you find yourself thinking about the 19s more often than you should, if the sound of a certain song or the grainy flicker of a VHS tape brings a sudden weight to your chest, it's not random. There is a profound psychological reason why some people feel so tethered to that decade. And believe me, it has very little to do with the music or the fashion. Today, we are going to explore what is actually happening in your mind and why your soul is desperate to return to an analog world. Those who miss the 19s aren't just missing a time period, they are missing a feeling, the feeling of existing without documentation. Today, every moment is scrutinized. Every meal, every landscape, every smile is imprisoned within a camera roll. In the 19s, moments disappeared the very second they ended. For a moment to be real, it didn't need to be photographed. It just needed to be lived. Think back to those evenings when you played outside until the streetlights came on. You stayed there not because it was magical, but because there was nowhere else to be. There were no group chats, no notifications, and the fear of missing out, FOMO, hadn't been invented yet because you couldn't see what everyone else was doing in real time. Saturday morning cartoons taught us a crucial psychological boundary: presence. If you missed your favorite show, it was gone. You couldn't pause it. You couldn't rewind it. You had to be fully there, or you lost it forever. This created a capacity for focus that today's generation may never fully grasp. We learned to value moments precisely because we knew they were temporary. The 19s weren't perfect, but they were undeniably quieter. Your mind had a private space to wander, a void independent of the outside world. Your thoughts had room to take shape without being interrupted every 30 seconds by a ping or a buzz. Most importantly, you could be bored. And back then, boredom wasn't a crisis. It was a natural part of existing. You would lie on your bed, stare at the ceiling, and let your mind create its own games. There was no algorithm feeding you content, no endless scroll to numb your senses. It was just you and your thoughts. It was a school where we learned how to be friends with ourselves. Today's world no longer allows for that. Silence feels uncomfortable, and stillness feels wrong. Your mind is constantly forced to consume, and somewhere deep down, you remember those days when your mind belonged solely to you. You remember when your attention wasn't a commodity to be sold, and when being unreachable wasn't a source of anxiety, it was true freedom. The 19s taught us to trust the world in a way that feels impossible now. You rode your bike across town without a GPS. You knocked on a friend's door without texting first, and if they weren't home, you simply accepted it and moved on. There were no confirmation messages or "where are you?" inquiries. You simply went, and you trusted that people would be where they said they would be. This environment of trust created a different kind of nervous system, one that was more relaxed, more peaceful, and less on edge. Information moved slowly. The news wasn't a catastrophe falling into your pocket every minute. It was a summary you watched at a specific time in the evening. We didn't carry the weight of global tragedies before we even had breakfast. People who miss the 19s aren't just missing the years, they are missing that sense of safety. They miss a world that didn't feel like it was constantly falling apart, a world where people actually looked each other in the eye. In the 19s, not knowing something was normal, and it often sparked an adventure. You would wait weeks for the radio to announce the name of a song you loved. When you argued with friends about a movie plot, no one could pull a phone out of their pocket to prove the truth. The debate itself, the exchange of ideas, was the entire point. You discovered music by accident. You recorded songs off the radio with your finger hovering over the stop button, praying the DJ wouldn't talk over the outro. That effort made the music sacred. That mystery made the discovery meaningful. Today, everything is instant. Every question is answered immediately. Every song is identified in seconds. Mystery is killed before it can even form. And somewhere in your chest, you feel the loss of that search. What made finding something so special was the excitement found within the state of not knowing. The 19s generation learned to exist without an audience. We developed our sense of self through real interactions, not through likes and comments. Our worth wasn't measured by follower counts, but by the quiet moments we shared. Now, the world demands constant visibility. Life is no longer just lived. It is curated, edited, and placed in a digital storefront for the approval of others. People who miss the 19s are exhausted by this constant state of performance. They long for the weightlessness of the days when they could just be a human being, not a brand or a profile page. In the 19s, life was simpler because your options were finite, You didn't have 1,000 shows to scroll through. You had the few channels the antenna could catch. You didn't have a million games in a digital library. You had the 3 cartridges you actually owned, and you played them until you knew every pixel and secret path. We often look back at these limitations as a lack of freedom, but psychologically, they were a gift. These boundaries actually created depth. When your options were limited, you committed. You watched the same movie so many times, you knew every line of dialogue, every breath, and every frame. You built a deep, lasting relationship with the stories you consumed because you couldn't just discard them for something better. Today, we live in the age of the infinite scroll. We have access to everything, but somehow, everything feels shallower. We watch 10 minutes of 100 different shows but can't name our favorite. We have thousands of digital friends but feel lonelier than ever. People who miss the 19s aren't missing the lack of choice. They are missing the profound focus and the soul-level commitment that those limitations once forced upon us. If you miss the 19s, you are experiencing a specific form of grief that modern society doesn't have a name for. It isn't just nostalgia. Nostalgia is missing a person or a place. What you are feeling is a mourning for a version of the world that will never exist again. You are homesick for a pace of life that your nervous system still remembers, even if the world around you has forgotten it. This is the grief of the analog soul trapped in a digital cage. You are mourning the trust that's been lost, the privacy that's been traded for convenience, and the mystery that's been solved by an unfeeling algorithm. It is the quiet heartbreak of realizing that while the world moved forward, it left behind the essential breathing room we all need to feel whole. We are grieving the time when we could disappear into our own thoughts without being tracked, pinged, or optimized. Nobody talks about this grief because it sounds silly or outdated, but it is a legitimate existential loss. It is the ache of an old soul trying to maintain its color in a world that is increasingly turning into gray, fast-moving pixels. If you miss the 19s, someone has likely told you to stop living in the past. But the truth is, you aren't living in the past. You are experiencing grief. You are grieving for a version of the world that will never exist again, for a rhythm of life that is gone forever. You are homesick for the breathing room that your nervous system still remembers. It is a longing for a world where you could simply be without having to explain yourself, document yourself, or be constantly accessible. The 19s are not coming back, but the feeling you are chasing, that peace, that simplicity, that sense of being enough without having to prove it, is still possible. Not by going backward, but by bringing what mattered into the present. By turning off notifications, by viewing silence as a friend rather than an enemy, and by living your life as an experience rather than a performance, you can rebuild that world within yourself. The world moved on, but that doesn't mean you have to move at its destructive pace. Perhaps the reason you miss the 19s so much is because your soul still remembers what it actually feels like to breathe. If you liked the video, you can subscribe and stay updated on our other videos.